Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are going to talk about this trilogy of games. My City Roll and Build, and My Island. All of them designed by Reiner, Knizia. All of them released by Kosmos. And this guy we did get as a review copy, but all of our thoughts are all our own.
And they are all tile placement games, which is a type of game that we really like playing. And they are also all campaign games, and we have played through each of them. So combined, we have played a whole bunch of these games.
Yeah, we played I would think 100-ish times, because these guys are 24 game campaigns. And we played through this one twice.
Yeah.
And we played through this one, I think we're on to our second one too. So we played oodles of these, so we've got a lot to talk about.
And we won't give away any spoilers, but we will do a brief overview of how each of them work, starting with My City.
So My City is the first in the series, and this is the most just kind of what you would think of as a tile placement game. So you got your old school polyominoes and all of the classic Tetris shapes, and those are different buildings. You start off with this empty board, and then each turn you play out a card, and that tells you which polyomino shape you can play to your board. And in the first part of the campaign, you're just trying to put those next to each other. You're just trying to fill up the board. You're trying to cover rocks, avoid trees. You're not allowed to go on the river. It's basically all the rules. As you move on, they're going to add different rules. You're going to be grouping those buildings differently. You're going to be making lines from this to that. You're going to be adding stickers and other stuff that I don't want to spoil from you. But pretty much that's how that one plays.
In My City Roll and Build, you are doing the same thing as in My City of putting buildings out onto a field, but it's the roll and write version. So instead of a card getting flipped and picking a tile, you roll dice, and then those dice, how they fit together is the type of building that you're drawing out. And they keep the building drawing really simple. It's like solid lines, diagonals, and then an X. So you don't have to be an expert at drawing. And each episode is done on a separate piece of paper. So it means the map is able to change a little bit more than in My City, where it's all done on a board. And just like My City, new things get introduced throughout as you go, although there are fewer episodes that you play in this one.
My Island is the newest one in this series. This one just came out this year. It's a 2023 game, and it does change things a little bit in that you're no longer using those polyomino Tetris shapes. Now you're using hexes, and actually you're using little kind of clusters of hexes. So each hex is a different building, but they come in sets of 2, 3, and 4 buildings. But like the original, you're playing at a card. That card tells you which one of your tiles you're allowed to put out, and then you're adding that to your island. You're trying to cover up spaces. You're just starting in the early ones, just kind of around the outside, and then stuff's going to get added. You're going to reach more parts of the board and all of that stuff that you would expect. And it definitely follows along the same lines, but it does add a little bit of complexity. But let's just jump into kind of the different categories and talk about which one we think shines in different ways.
Let's start with replayability, and just by playing the campaign, you are going to play these a ton. My City Roll and Build is 12 plays to play through the campaign. The other two are 24. So already 24 plays of a game is a lot of times.
Yeah, there's not a lot of games on our shelves that we've played 24 times. That's oodles of plays. You do have to keep in mind that the average playtime it says is 30 minutes, and that's probably a long playtime for a longer scenario. So these are fairly quick, but even with that, there's 3 different kind of little episodes in a chapter, and we play it 3 times back to back every time we play it, and still we've got a lot of plays out of this.
Yeah, and I think they intend for you to play it 3 back to back because it's divided into chapters. So for each chapter, you get to open up, for the big games at least, a big envelope, and it introduce a whole new rule set, some new maybe components and bits that come out, and it's just really exciting to get to each chapter as well. That we're okay, let's play through this, so the next sitting we can open up a brand new envelope.
And My City Roll and Build, even though it doesn't have that envelope, and it's a little bit shorter, it's just 12 plays. A great thing about that one, though, is that you've got between the front and the back of each one of those sheets, you've got 24 plays through of that campaign. So that is oodles of times that you're playing through that game. If there's 12 campaigns, if there's 12 within a campaign and there's 24 times, that's like 288 plays there. And there definitely wasn't an edit there when I quickly grabbed a calculator and looked that up. But just guessing, I was only 8 off, so I'm very proud of that. But that means that that's like a ton of plays. And so that one, it actually plays from 1 to 6 players. So even with 6 players, that's like quite a few. You can play all the way through that, 4 times?
Yeah. Yeah, 4 times, yeah.
We didn't even need a calculator for that math. So that's very impressive. But an important thing to remember is each one of those plays is really short. None of these took us more than kind of a couple of weeks to get 100% of the way through the campaign. Even if we're busy with other things or playing other games, it's just something that you kind of come back to.
Yeah, at the end of the campaigns for My City and My Island, there are ways to play them that aren't the campaign style. We haven't found ourselves drawn to play that because, we played My City like 50 times. So we didn't really feel the need to keep playing.
But I feel like that's kind of when you've got a campaign game. It's like, who's ever played Pandemic when you're done Pandemic? I think Clank Legacy is the only one that's broken that for us. Not sure these are going to be the ones that do it as well.
But you would have played them a lot by that point anyway.
Yeah, you have 48 plays under your belt. That's, they cost like $20. You're getting a pretty good return. So Let's talk a little bit about components. And all of these have fairly equal component quality. It's not going to knock your socks off, but it's important to kind of remember that they are trying to be pretty affordable and they're campaign games, so they're also a little bit disposable.
Yeah, nothing's super fancy, but it does its job. So for My City, roll and build, I think the dice are nice and chunky, but they are a little bit light.
They're weirdly light.
Yeah.
I wish there was a little bit more. I almost want to open them up and put something in there. Yeah, they're weirdly a little bit too light.
And I don't think it came with pencils either, but you usually have pencils kicking around.
They always give those little golf pencils that I just chuck in any sort of roll and write game.
But the sheets are double-sided and thick enough that it doesn't bleed through. So that's nice that you can use pen, and you can use pen on both sides without it impacting the other side.
For My City and My Island, the tiles are a decent thickness. They're I feel a little thinner than kind of a Barren Park or kind of your average tile placement game, but also it's meant to be a campaign game, so they're meant to be kind of disposable, and they're trying to keep it affordable, so all of that's reflected. But they're decent. I think everything in them is good.
Yeah. So for complexity, all 3 of them are light tile placement games, and I think I would play these with relatively new gamers. It does a really good job of that very first episode. You can just start playing and it keeps the rules really simple, really straightforward, and then builds complexity as you go for each of them.
I think with a new gamer, you probably couldn't start them on episode 22. But if you start them in episode 1 and then you're playing through the thing, episode 22 is going to be absolutely no problem because it does such a good job of just holding your hand from game to game. And I think all 3 of them do that.
Yeah, if this is the first tile placement game they're playing, I think after this, they would easily be able to pick up other tile placement games because it has built that complexity already.
So I think My Island is the most complex. I think they've kind of added layers as they've gone through, which is what you would hope that one would do with this sort of a series. But that's a little bit misleading to say it's the most complex because all of them are super light. But I think My City is such a terrific starting point for folks that I don't really see any reason to start with the other ones because you're going to get so much out of that. And then it's great to go from My City to My City Roll and Build to My Island, or even My City to My Island if you're not into the roll and write thing. But I do think that My City is probably the easiest one to get people into. So that's such a great starting point. And My Island does build even newer stuff that if you've done My City already, you got to the end, you're still going to have new surprises, be learning new things, seeing new things when you play through My Island.
So that leads us into who it's for, and we mentioned it's a good one to bring new gamers in, but also if you just like tile placement games and you like campaign games, this mushes those two together very nicely. But I don't know if you would necessarily need to start with My City. I think it is a good one to start with, but if My Island's the only one available, I think you could play that one first and then play like My City afterwards.
Yeah, it's not like there's like a story, like you're gonna ruin anything. And we haven't really mentioned that there is a story in it, kind of. There's like a sentence or two before each episode. So don't expect this to like be this enthralling story. The story is just like, and now this new building arrived. It's like unbelievably simple. So you can totally play them in any order. But I would say one group this is really going to be for is, I think this is terrific if you're playing with two players. I think this is such a solid, maybe there are a lot of two player, but this is such a solid two player campaign game, both because you can play through it again, and there's not any reason really to have more than two players. There's not really interaction. It's mostly just like trying to get the most points, but you're not messing with each other. Any reason you'd have more people.
Yeah, so I don't think I wouldn't play it if I was more than two, but I just think the bonus of being able to play through it again is such a nice bonus at two players.
Right, yeah, if you got a group of four and they're all desperate to play it, don't be like, no, only two of us could play. Yes, all four of you could play. You would all have a good time. But I'm really going to put you on the spot here. Usually we don't do this sort of thing, but let's do it. But what is your favorite of the three? Like, how would you rank them from your experience playing through them?
It's really tough to decide, but I think if I had to, my favorite would be My City. It was the very first campaign tile placement game we played, and we enjoyed it so much. We played through right away afterwards. And I think it's just also the classic polyomino shapes that are so satisfying to fit together. My Island is second. I think they introduced a few layers, and I really like the new stuff that they brought in. I found it a little bit more surprising than My City, but just the hexes didn't quite grab me as much as the other polyomino shapes. And then the roll and build version is really great for like a roll and write, and you can play it through so many times. Just the components are just a sheet of paper as opposed to like a board and your own tiles.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that list. I asked you the question, and then I had not thought of an answer yet. But yes, the roll and write I would put on the bottom, which isn't really fair because it's a super cheap game. It's a roll and write. It's not asking as much, like it's not trying to do as much, but it's doing a lot for what it is, I think. But it would still be third. But then the top two are just so neck and neck. It's so hard to say. I think I would put My Island first. That's partly because we played My City like 48 times. We played all the way through it twice. I think like 50 times because we actually tried to play the Eternal game as well. So I kind of had my fill of My City. Whereas My Island had a few kind of cool, like interesting surprises and other things in there that I'm still really keen to play back through that again and play another 24 of those. If I was saying though, like which one to start with, I still think My City is such a great way to start.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to playing through My Island again. And I think that's another bonus about it playing through as two players, because the first time you're not entirely too sure like where all the points are going to come from for either My City or My Island. Whereas I found for the second time we played through My City, we had a much better understanding. So we're targeting those points that would come up more at the end better. And so for My Island, I already have some ideas of some things I want to do differently.
Oh, see, I don't like that because My City Jess won first and then I won the follow-up, but My Island, I won first, and I'm very worried that because I kind of lucked out in some parts, now you know, and so I'm worried about I'm going to have to be on my very best in order to win the second time. And that is it. That is our thoughts on all three of My City, Roll and Build, and My Island.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you played any of the three, and if you have, which one is your favorite. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.